hard to turn and walk the other way, however sound the political reasons for doing so are. If someone's suffering, you must relieve it.
Yes, next to him.
Yeah, to use your analogy, is the point not that the wound is so great that a sticking plaster is doing no good anyway? The people are so hungry that throwing a few £1 million at them isn't going to do any good anyway, so you may as well leave it.
No, that's true. And that is, of course, recognised by them. That sticking... yes, I mean, the analogy is in danger of becoming rather unpleasant. It's a sort of wheel of blood floating around Africa. But... where it's possible to feed people, simply to feed them and stop them dying, that can be done by giving small, very surprisingly small amounts of money. But you're absolutely right. The crucial thing is once having done that, is to make sure it never happens again. And that is primarily political, and Oxfam and other charities recognise that.
Yes, Lloyd Henry.
Do you think that more of the money from Comic Relief should have gone to home-based charities?
Well, 33% went this year, and it's a difficult thing to say, because as the earlier questioner remarked, this is really the job for our government, where in cases like Ethiopia and Sudan, the governments are so unstable that they can't, they just don't have the tax base to give away. In our country, we do have enough of our own money to make sure that, the vast quantities of pensioners who are on subsistence level in this country, the enormous numbers of homeless, we have enough money to make sure that shouldn't happen.
Yes, Rana Mehta.
Do you think it's fair for comics to unite to exercise political pressure in that way, in the same way that they unite to ask people to, to grab the fibres out of their pockets?
Well, I think it wouldn't be, and I think that's the dangerous tightrope that Comic Relief walked, is that it tried to be as unpolitical as possible, and as a result, of course, people saying, but you're supposed to be left-wing, why are you associating yourself with this charity, which is just a sticking plaster or a sop, and so on. And basically, we all agreed that it was a very good idea to get a lot of money together to do certain projects, and that we wouldn't try and drag politics into it, because that would alienate a lot of people who would otherwise give money, and we would shut our mouths about it for the sake of Comic Relief. Not that we were telling lies at all, but simply that the urgent priority was simply to get money in, and that was that. And then afterwards, if we wished to be political, then we could do so.
Yes.
But surely events like Comic Relief, in a sense, massage the conscience of the nation, which is hurting a little bit, and by the action of phoning up and donating £5 or pledging £5, people then tend to put it to the back of their mind for another 6 months until the next telethon comes along, and in the long run, that's not doing much good.
Well, again, you see, you're saying people do. Do you?
I don't have a credit card, but...
no, but have you put it to the back of your mind?
I would admit that if I did have a credit card, it would probably, to an extent, satisfy my conscience if I made a donation, because then it would be at the forefront of my mind for a while that I'd done something generous, something big. And from the average, I would say the average person's point of view in Britain, that would be a fairly normal reaction. There's nothing really... there's no condemnation involved in it.
No,
it's a natural reaction.
I agree. It does get, as you say, pushed back, but at least it's been forward for a time. My worry is that if these things aren't done at all, then it will never be in the forefront of their minds. I mean, the fact is that government aid is the really large sum. I mean, however much money was raised by Live Aid, Comic Relief, and all those things put together, it doesn't amount to a tenth of the yearly grants that this country can make. And we recently, under Thatcher, changed basically the calculations by which grant aid is given to other countries. That's to say, its relation to our gross national product and so on was altered out of line with other countries, which has meant hundreds of millions of pounds we have not given over the last few years.
Well, again, let's move on to another aspect of your comedy career. A question from Mark McBrien.
On occasions, Stephen, your comedy seems a bit vulgar, what you might even call toilet humour.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see that as being an important part of comedy, or would you see it as being a sort of mask, maybe, on occasions when you're not feeling so...
I don't know, you're absolutely right, and I'm glad you noticed it, because it's a very odd thing. I think because Hugh and I have slightly sort of Oxbridge manners and rather patrician accents and so on, people often think, it's those Ponzi too, with and so on, and they don't notice that actually a lot of it is quite rude. And we, I must say, get away with a lot more rudeness. I mean, Ben Elton is always complaining to us that he has virtually never sworn on television.
Is it really necessary? Aren't you cutting down your audience by swearing a lot, by having to go late on
reason
BBC
not
Two?
the need, Krishnan. Reason not the need. It's not necessary to wear a pullover on television, but one sometimes does because it seems the right thing to do at the time. It's not necessary is a very bad question, if I may say so. I mean, because there is nothing necessary about any television.
But isn't it perhaps rather superfluous, easily got rid of and not missed?
It would be missed by me, I have to say. I mean, I don't think it's... I have to say, I do find Bottoms extremely funny. I don't know why it is. I do. I find them very funny. And it'll take a lot
Are you not afraid of offending people?
Sorry?
Are you not afraid of offending people at home?
Not really. I think most people find Bottoms funny. I've been in cars with little old ladies who've made a string of Bottom jokes and then have seen the word used on television and been extremely outraged.
Yes.
Does that mean that you write for yourself what you find funny and don't care that much about what other people think?
Well, one cares about what they think, but when you're writing it, you can only write about about things that make you laugh. And I'm sure anybody watching has ever written a comedy sketch. The only way to do it is to do it in such a way it makes you laugh. You may then find nobody else in the world laughs, in which case you've probably got the wrong job. But if a certain selection of people also find it funny, and it has to be a small BBC Two audience, then it's fun.
Yes.
Do you have faith in your taste in comedy? Do you think that what you write, if it pleases you, it will please the audience?
I have faith that it will please a certain number of people, and perhaps a growing number of people. One hopes, yes. I think you have to, because otherwise, the BBC wouldn't have given one the job of doing a show if they didn't also believe that.
Aren't you somewhat out of place? I mean, who do you regard as your influences? To me, it strikes me as Python, very much in the Cambridge tradition of comedy. Shouldn't you have been born, perhaps 15 years earlier?
Yes, people who know me, it varies from 15 to 200 years earlier, or possibly not yet in some cases. I think there's a truth. I do feel myself nonetheless absolutely a child of my generation in terms of my love of its technology, apart from anything else, and my feeling for the age. I think the traditions that a lot of English films have been greatly influential on me and so on, as well as obviously Cleese and Peter Cook, huge influences.
Yes.
Your own brand of comedy now is to a certain extent a tradition, since, if you like, a certain clique of comedians over the past 7 years, like yourself, Ade Edmondson, Ben Elton, etc., have dominated the circuit. Do you not think there's a danger that you've now got such a monopoly on television and film comedy that it's an obstacle to newcomers coming through?
I would hate to think that it was. It may be that it is. It's a terrifying thought. There's no question. Not just performers, but also producers. There are a lot of ambitious young floor managers and directors who had just sort of around 1978 were starting to think about things, who were going to clubs then and gathering together. They went to the Comedy Store and they saw Rick and Ade, and they saw Jennifer Saunders and Dawn French, and they said, we must get to you for the show. And they're now managing directors of television companies, and they have companies that put on programs and organise scheduling, and there obviously is a kind of, the doors shut somewhere about 1983 or 4, didn't they? And
So you're happy with that monopoly? I mean,
no,
obviously
not at all.
you
I
and
don't.
Rick,
I mean,
you
I
go
don't
on to do
regard
Commons
it.
Pursuit and things like that.
No, I'd hate to think that it was a monopoly.
So what can you do, what can other performers do to allow new talent to break through? What's going to be the next alternative comedy, if you want?
I don't know. I mean, the audience will decide, is basically it. You can't project artists at an audience and say, these are the new comedians and you will like them. The audience will discover, and they'll discover in clubs or they'll discover on a talent show, God knows where.
Do you want to come in?
Does it ever worry you that people will look back and see you just as an alternative comedian? Is that why you go into other outlets such as writing and things?
No, it doesn't worry me. I mean, I enjoy everything I do, and I would hate to think that alternative comedian is such a lowly form of profession that it's something I have to dignify by being a writer as well. I'd be perfectly happy for people to think that. I remember when I was young, I was terribly disappointed when, one realised that John Cleese wasn't going to be in the last series of Monty Python, and because he wanted to do some writing. I didn't know at the time it was going to be writing for Fawlty Towers, which was obviously well worth the wait. I thought, how can anyone not want to be a comedian? It seems absurd. But, there are other things that are appealing.
Yes.
Were your parents disappointed that you left Cambridge to become a comedian? Or?
I don't know if they were disappointed. I think originally they'd wanted me to be a barrister, or at least they'd sort of said that. I mean, they'd always wanted me to do what I wanted to do, and they'd obviously hoped that it earned me something. But I think they're now pretty pleased, actually.
Yes, in the back row.
So would you regard yourself as essentially a comedian rather than a writer or whatever?
When the chips are down, I suppose, yes, really. I mean, if someone pointed a gun at me, I think I'd crack a joke before writing a letter to them, That's my instinct.
Yes, Jonathan.
Yeah, would you ever think of doing another career? Would you ever think of just changing it totally?
Well, yes, teaching is the only thing that has ever really appealed to me, which I sometimes wonder if I haven't strangled a more natural vocation, which is to be a teacher. I taught for a year before going to Cambridge. In fact, you have this sort of gap before going.
What subject would you?
Well, at this school I taught Latin, French, English, maths, history, biology. It was a prep school.
Is that much more of a reaction perhaps to your school days?
Possibly, yes. Possibly. I suppose there is just great pleasure I get in kindling enthusiasm in any way it comes.
Yes.
After you came out of a very lucky education in Cambridge, did you feel then that you had a duty to put something constructive back into society, and do you think you put it in by choosing the career of alternative comedian rather than, say, teacher?
Well, with respect, I hope